The word gnosis is of Greek origin and means knowledge. Gnosis appears in times of crisis, in very unique times when there exists crisis of values, of ethical principles, in all senses and in all forms. Gnostic wisdom is for all human beings without distinction of race, religion, political belief, economic or social condition. In essence, the Gnosis pursues the integral transformation of the human being. Gnosis, as knowledge, rests on four fundamental pillars. These four pillars are philosophy, science, art, and religion. Gnosis, from the philosophical point of view, prepares the student by elevating our state of mind to welcome the unpleasant things in life. In other words, it guides us and helps us to know our own psychology. Gnosis, as a science, teaches us to know life, both its principles and its manifestations. What kind of life? The life that was deposited in our human organism from the moment fertilization occurred. Through art, Gnosis allows us to understand the true meaning of the different cultures that have existed both in the eastern and western parts of the world. But the true Gnostic art is directed towards the creation of the inner human being. It is directed towards the creation of the existential superior bodies of the being, which is synthesized, in other words, in the awakening of the consciousness. Consciousness allows human beings to do things well. Gnosis, through religion, teaches the principle or foundation of religion, which is religare. What is religare? Religare means the unification of man with God. With which God? With our own profound inner God. It is necessary for us to understand and find ourselves centered in the true, real values of Gnosis. It is important to understand that there is Gnosis, and then there are agnostics, for example. People who know Gnosis but do not accept it. And there are people who are sympathetic to Gnosis. But self-Gnosis is something totally different. Self-Gnosis arises in the person to the extent that they live the four pillars of Gnosis in their daily lives: philosophy, science, art, and religion, as described previously. In other words, self-Gnosis is the integration and the expression of all the eternal values that exist in the soul and that exist in the conscience, but do not manifest in the person. So when the person practices this knowledge that is eminently practical, the result is the awakening of our consciousness. Consciousness is the foundation of self-Gnosis, or in other words, the knowledge of ourselves. There are different philosophical, religious, esoteric schools in the world that undoubtedly guide and help the human being to make changes, to be a good citizen, etc. But it is also necessary at this time to emphasize that Gnosis has two expressions of universal knowledge. It is divided into two parts and has two different characteristics that are known as the knowledge of the eye, or let's say, the doctrine of the eye, and the doctrine of the heart. In the doctrine of the eye, we find all those beliefs, sectarian dogmas, etc., that the human being has been forming from life, from God, from the things around us. But Gnosis, through the doctrine of the heart, allows the human being to develop internally. Gnosis, through the doctrine of the heart, puts into action the soul's senses, those faculties that allow us to know the great realities of life and death. Gnosis, through the doctrine of the heart, leads the human being to achieve inner development. Gnosis, through the doctrine of the heart, allows us to interpret the words that Christ said to Nicodemus at one time. Nicodemus says to him, "Master, how can a man be old, die, or enter his mother's womb, and be born again?" Then Christ said to him, "No, in truth, I truly tell you, that he who is not born from the water and the Spirit cannot enter the kingdom of heaven." That is to say, that birth of which Christ referred to has to do with the doctrine of the heart, which is the awakening of consciousness.